Hello everyone and welcome back to Carvenus 14. Now today we are going to be taking a look at the new characters that are supposedly going to be coming out in patch 3.1. Well, they are coming out, it's already been officially confirmed by the drip marketing of miHoYo. But today we're going to be looking at their stats because their stats were actually released yesterday, at least for UK time. It was around 6 PM, but I wasn't available at that time, so we're doing it today. Now, I'm going to make 3 separate videos. So first we're going to go through Nilou, then we're going to go through Chino, and then we're going to go through Candice. Now, the way these videos are going to work is I'm going to go through one character's kit, and then I'm going to go over the possible builds that you could possibly run on them. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, so we're going to start off with Nilou. So Nilou is a 5-star sword user, and they also happen to have a Hydro Vision as well. So for any Hydro lovers out there, this would be perfect. Also, with the actual Hydro Resonance changes now as well, Hydro Resonance basically gives you 25% increased max HP now. So maybe that's to do with Nilou coming out, as well as Candice, because Candice is also a Hydro user as well. So yeah, it looks as though we're not going to take a detailed look at like her scaling and attack stat and stuff like that, because we're not a numbers channel. We're just looking at that person channel and deducing what they are channel. So yeah, anyway, we can see that her Ascension passive is HP, which means, yeah, she's going to be related to HP somehow within her kit. Now, as for the material she'll need, it looks as though she'll need Perpetual Caliber Blight Drakes. I think these are the Ruined Dragon things. I think that's what they are. These are Padisara. Padisaras are found in Sumeru. Yeah, near Sumeru City. I've come across some of them in my travels in Sumeru City. And then the last one is Fungal Spores. So mainly in the rainforest area, basically, is what they're going to need. So, yeah, anyway, as for the actual attack skills and stuff like that, well, she performs up to 3 consecutive sword strikes. So I think out of all of the sword users, she has the least amount of strikes. Yeah, she only has 3. Which is actually pretty crazy if you think about it, because I'm pretty sure most sword characters in the game have like 5 or 6 strikes, but Nilou's the only one with less than 5. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Then as for her elemental skill, it's called the Dance of the 7 Realms. So Nilou enters the pirouette state, dealing hydro damage to nearby opponents based on max HP. There we go. So that's where the max HP Ascension stat is going to be coming in. And while she's in the pirouette state, Nilou's normal attacks and elemental attacks will cause her to enter the sword dance and whirling step stances respectively. Okay. And that causes damage she deals to be converted into hydro damage. So basically when you pop her elemental skill, she'll basically start dealing hydro damage instead of physical damage. So I'm presuming the way you want to build her is going to be like an elemental DPS basically. So yeah, instead of a physical DPS. And the hydro damage can't be overwritten, and it's considered as elemental skill damage. So it's not classed as normal attack or normal skill damage. So stuff like Gladiator's Finale 4-piece, where it increases your normal attack damage, the 4-piece won't actually apply when Nilou's in her elemental form, because that's going to be classed as elemental skill damage, if that makes sense, basically. So, yeah. In these stances, Nilou's 3rd dance step will end pirouette. So I'm presuming what that means is, after the 3rd hit, it's going to end the pirouette, and it will have the following effects. So the sword dance effect will unleash a watery moon that deals hydro damage to opponents it touches. Okay, so just straight up deal hydro damage to opponents, and it grants Nilou the Lunar Prayer effect. Now the Lunar Prayer effect converts Nilou's normal attacks into sword dance techniques. Okay. And her final hit will unleash a watery moon. So basically, I think the Lunar Prayer effect will effectively like reset the. I think what it will do is it will reset the hydro damage that she does, and her final hit will unleash a watery moon basically. Yeah. So the watery moon, if you guys, where is it? Where did it say earlier? It said somewhere. Did it not say somewhere? Oh yeah, unleashes a watery moon. Yeah, so basically it will unleash another watery moon, which will basically deal to the entire effect happening again. Yeah, whether it resets the elemental skill or not, I don't think it will, but I think it resets the effect that the elemental skill grants, basically. Yeah. Whirling, and then that was Sword Dance. Now, Whirling Steps. Nilou unleashes a hurtling water wheel that deals AoE hydro damage and creates a tranquility aura that follows your active character around and applies wet to opponents within its AoE. Oh, so Whirling Steps, I believe, basically, you effectively just deal one instance of hydro damage, like hydro AoE damage, and then it creates, like, from the sounds of things, maybe a circle or a line or something that follows your character, and it applies wet to opponents within its AoE. So basically a bit like Barbara's elemental skill, if you think about it, where she basically has the melody ring around your active character. Yeah. It also does make your active character wet as well, whereas it doesn't say that with the actual Whirling Steps part. So maybe it only makes opponents wet, but not yourself. So yeah, maybe that's how it will work, I'm presuming. So yeah, just to recap, her elemental skill converts all of her normal attacks into hydro damage, and that is classed as elemental skill damage instead of normal attack damage. And basically, after the third version, or the third hit, this third string here, after that happens, you'll receive one of the two effects. So the Sword Dance effect or the Whirling Steps effect. So the Sword Dance effect basically just resets the entire hydro damage thing, and you can go again, basically. And the Whirling Steps effect will basically deal a massive AoE hydro damage, and basically it will make a hydro ring or something like that around your character, basically. So yeah, that's what the two effects will do. Nilou is unable to perform charged attacks when under the effect of Pirouette or Lunar Prayer. These effects will be removed once she leaves the field or exits the state. So basically, she can't do charged attacks. A bit like Ayato, he won't be able to do charged attacks once he pops his elemental skill, basically. So yeah. And these are the sword damage. So you guys can see here that her damage basically scales with max HP. So it looks as though you just want to stack as much HP on Nilou as much as possible. Yeah. Which means we'll have to factor that into when we're going to build her, like her beta build in this case. So yeah. I'm presuming these bonuses are added on top of the actual current damage that she'll do. So on top of the 50%, she'll also deal an additional, 4.55 or 3.26% max health on top of that, basically. So yeah. So it looks as though you kind of just want to stack as much HP as possible on her. Yeah. And then, as for the actual pirouette duration, so basically, this is the pirouette duration. So the pirouette is basically the elemental skill, like we stated, right? It's going to last for 10 seconds. The Lunar Prayer duration, so basically, if you trigger the Lunar Prayer duration, it will last for 8 seconds. So all in all, Nilou's, if she triggers the Lunar Prayer, it will last for a total of 18 seconds, the buff, right? And the Tranquility Aura duration will last for 12 seconds. So if you trigger the other half, right, basically, so Lunar Prayer can be triggered by the Sword Dance version, and the Tranquility Aura will be triggered by the Whirling Steps version, right? So if you trigger the Lunar Prayer version, it will last for 18 seconds, whereas if you trigger the Tranquility Aura version, it will last for 22 seconds, it would seem. And it has an 18-second cooldown, so basically you can have a 100% uptime on Nilou's elemental skill, right? So effectively, you literally do want to just stack HP because you will hardly ever be in her normal state. You want to be in your elemental skill state in order to deal damage. So yeah, that's what it sounds like anyway. But yeah, pretty interesting skill. Definitely going the way a Hydro character would probably want to go, especially with the Hydro Resonance changes. But anyway, moving on to the ultimate, which is called Dance of the Lotus, Distant Dreams, and Listening Spring. So basically, Nilou begins the dance of a faraway dream and springs that here, causing a lotus of distant water to bloom, dealing AoE hydro damage based on Nilou's max HP and applying lingering Aeon effect to all opponents hit. At an interval, opponents affected by lingering Aeon will take hydro damage. So basically, Nilou just does AoE hydro damage, and the damage will scale off of Nilou's max HP. And obviously other stats like crit damage and hydro damage bonus and stuff like that, basically. and it will apply the lingering Aeon effect to to opponents that are hit by the initial AoE. After an interval, opponents affected by the lingering Aeon will take Hydro damage. So they'll basically take another explosion of Hydro damage, basically. Yeah. So think of it like Child's Riptide effect, except it's on a ticking time bomb instead of actually you having to activate it, basically. Yeah. So the skill damage actually does scale pretty decently with Nilou's max HP, and the lingering Aeon damage it scales even harder. Look at that, 54.07% if you do plan on triple crowning her, but if you plan on taking her to level 8 or level 6, it's about 42 to 48%, which still isn't that bad. Yeah. The cooldown is 18 seconds, and the energy cost is 70, so a bit on the expensive side, but the way you want to have Nilou set up in the party is most likely with 2 Hydro characters, including herself. So it definitely does make sense that you'd have another Hydro character. So battery really shouldn't really be that much of an issue, to be honest. Yeah. Now, as for her passive skills, so her initial passive is basically the overworld passive that literally everyone gets. So when perfect cooking is achieved with a food with an adventure-related effect, there is a 12% chance to obtain double the product. So adventure-related effects, guys, are basically stuff to do with stamina and things like that. So gliding stamina, swimming stamina, sprinting stamina, climbing stamina, that kind of stuff, basically. Yeah. And then Court of Dancing Petals. My god, why? The kit is ridiculous. There's so many lines to read. When all characters in the party are either Dendro or Hydro, there is at least one Dendro and Hydro character, the flowery steps of Nilou's Dance of the Seven Realms will grant all nearby characters the Golden Chalice bounty for 30 seconds. So basically what that means is if you have a Dendro character, as well as a Hydro character in your team, basically all characters will basically gain a special effect after Nilou does her elemental burst. So basically it seems as though you want to run her with a Bloom kind of team in order to make use of this passive. Yeah, you probably want to run, like, Nilou counts as a Hydro character, then probably you want to run another Hydro character, and then you probably want to run a Dendro character, like Collei, for example. Yeah. Characters under the effect of the Golden Chalice bounty will have their elemental mastery increased by 60 for 10 seconds. Okay, so basically everyone under the effect of this buff will have their EM increased by 60 for 10 seconds. Okay, that's really good, especially for the Dendro characters, because they rely heavily on elemental mastery in order to deal damage. At least I think so, anyway. Yeah. Whenever they are hit by Dendro attacks. Okay, so characters under the effect of the Golden Chalice bounty will have their elemental mastery increased by 60%. Oh, by 60, sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant. By 60 for 10 seconds whenever they are hit by... Oh, okay, so in order to basically receive the elemental mastery, you need to get hit. So effectively, you don't really want to run a shield unit on this team in order to fully utilize this passive. Yeah. At least you can still dodge, but, you kind of want to take damage in order to receive the buff. So, yeah. Also, triggering the Bloom reaction will create bountiful cores instead of Dendro cores. Oh, okay. So, if you guys don't know, the Bloom reaction, basically, when you apply Hydro on Dendro, or Dendro on Hydro, it will basically create this heart-shaped Dendro core thing, and basically, after 6 seconds, it will explode, and it will deal AoE Dendro damage. So, basically, bountiful cores will instead be spawned instead of Dendro cores. So it's basically it's Nilou's version of the Dendro cores, effectively, when you trigger a Bloom reaction. Yeah. Such cores will burst very quickly after being created, and they have larger AoEs. Okay, so they basically explode faster than Dendro cores, and they have much larger AoEs, so you can, become an AoE machine sniping team, basically. Bountiful cores cannot trigger Hyper Bloom or Burgeon. Oh, okay. So if you guys didn't know, once you create like Bloom reactions and stuff like that, you should be able to add other elements as well onto Dendro in order to basically add other reactions in the mix as well, or on the Hydro element in order to add other reactions into the mix. But it looks as though Bountiful cores cannot trigger Hyper Bloom or Burgeon reactions. So basically, only Bloom reactions will be available to be used here, at least from what I'm understanding. And they share an upper limit with Dendro cores. Okay, so they share an upper numerical limit with Dendro cores. So I think what that means is they also have a limit like the Dendro cores do. Yeah, so they can't get any stronger. Bountiful core damage is considered damage dealt by dendro cores produced by a balloon. Okay, so basically the damage is considered the exact same as dendro cores. That's basically it. Yeah. So all in all, this passive is basically, if you have one Dendro character and one Hydro character on your team, after Nilou uses her burst, you gain an EM buff for 10 seconds if you're hit by Dendro attacks specifically, right? Yeah, and if you trigger a bloom reaction, you'll receive you'll create bountiful cores, which are basically bigger, scarier versions of Dendro cores. So yeah. Okay, that kind of makes sense. And then Dreamy Dance of Eons. So each 1,000 points of max HP above 30,000 will cause the damage dealt by bountiful cores created by characters affected by Golden Chalice's bounty to increase by 8%. The max increase in bountiful core that can be achieved this way is 300%. Okay, so basically for every 1,000 point you have above 30,000, your Golden Chalice damage will be increased by 8%. So basically, if you have around 40,000 HP on Nilou, you'll basically deal 80%. Am I reading that right? I think so. 80%. I would think so, yeah. So 80% extra damage. And if you get to 50,000, that's basically what? If you get to 50,000 HP, that's basically 80,000 multiplied by 2, so 160,000. Or 160%. Sorry. At least that's the way I'm reading this, yeah. But 300%, so what would be the upper limit then? Hold on, let's well, I said this wasn't a numbers channel, but we'll see, hold on. So, 240... I think you need around 55,000 HP in order to deal the maximum amount of damage. I think. Yeah, around 55,000 HP if you want to deal the max 300%. Around that number. Yeah. Which, to be honest, if you do build Nilou right, could actually be possible. But we'll get to the build later. Yeah, anyway, constellations. So, Dance of the Waning Moon. So, those were all Nilou's passive talents. These are constellations now. So, her C1... is Dance of the Seven Realms will be enhanced as follows. So the Watery Moon damage is increased by 65%. So Dance of the, what's it called? What is it? Dance of the Seven Realms. So her elemental skill, basically, guys, it will receive this buff. So Watery Moon damage is increased by 65%. So basically what that means is the Watery Moon damage, right? That is going to be increased by 65%. So 65% on top of the 7 point... So basically, it'll be 65% of the 7.17%. So 65% of 7.17 is... hold on. 7.17 multiplied by 0.65. Okay, plus 7.17. So all in all, at level 1, that will be an 11.8... This number will go from 7.17% to 11.8%, basically. Yeah. And then the Tranquility Aura's duration is extended by 6 seconds. So that will go from 12 seconds to 18 seconds, which means it'll go up to 28 seconds. Yeah, so you should comfortably be able to have it up all the time, basically. Yeah, but that's her elementals, that's her C1. Her C2, the Starry Skies, Their Flowers Rain. After characters affected by the Golden Chalice's bounty deal Hydro damage to opponents, that opponent's Hydro resistance will be decreased by 35% for 10 seconds. Okay, so basically, after characters affected by the Golden Chalice bounty, so after they are affected by her first unlockable passive here, right, after they deal Hydro damage to opponents, that opponent is going to have a decreased Hydro resistance by 35% for 10 seconds. So you really do want to get, you really do want to play around this passive, basically, if you have this C2. And then after you trigger a Bloom reaction, after a triggered Bloom reaction deals damage to opponents, their Dendro resistance will be decreased by 35% for 10 seconds as well. I see, okay. So basically, if a Hydro character deals damage to an opponent, right, or if a Hydro character deals Hydro damage to an opponent that's affected by the, that was affected by the Golden Chalice's bounty buff, their Hydro resistance will be decreased by 35%. And if a Dendro character helps Nilou or another Hydro character on your team create the Bloom reaction, the Dendro resistance will also be decreased for 10 seconds. This is actually really good because it not means you could effectively run Tighnari as well as Nilou on the same team if you have her C2, because they'll both deal ridiculous amounts of damage. That's actually really strong if you think about it. And you need to have the first passive unlocked in order for this to take effect. Okay. And then the third constellation increases so it increases the ultimate by 3 levels basically. And then Fricative Pulse is her C4. After the third dance step of Dance of the Seven Realms pirouette hits an opponent, Nilou will gain 15 elemental energy and damage from her Dance of the Lotus Distant Dreams. Listening Springs will increase by 50%. Okay, so basically, after Nilou's third hit on her third normal attack hits during her elemental skill state, she'll gain 15 elemental energy. So she'll refund 15 of her elemental. She'll just gain 15 elemental energy and damage from her. So basically, her ultimate will deal 50% increased damage for 8 seconds. Yeah, that includes the initial burst part as well as the bit after that. So it will include the skill damage as well as the lingering Aeon damage. So, yeah. And then her C5 is basically just increasing her skill damage by 3. And then Frostbreaker's Melody, which is her C6. For every 1,000 points of max HP that Nilou has, her crit rate and crit damage will be increased by 0.6% and 1.2% respectively. So a 1-to-2 ratio. And the max increase in crit rate and crit damage is 30% and 60% respectively. Oh my god. Wait. So, basically... So, 30... That's... How much HP would that mean? Hold on, guys. Another quick calculation moment for me, I think. So, if it's 1 to 2, then... How much HP... Okay, how much HP... I actually don't know how much HP would be needed here, to be honest. 30, that would be double, so 60. No, surely not. For every 1,000 points of max HP... Wait, so there isn't a limit. So does that mean even at 1,000 max... If Nilou just had 1,000 HP, does that mean she'll be getting this buff? So wait. Does that mean you need 60,000 HP in order to make use of this C6? If that's the case, then 60,000 HP. Oh my god. I think that's what the calculation actually means, guys. So I think in order for this C6 to get, in order for you to get the full C6 30% crit rate and 60% crit damage, I think you would need around 60% crit rate. Oh, 60,000 HP, I should say. Yeah, 60,000 HP. Which means if you do actually go for C6 Nilou, your build, the way you build Nilou will just change entirely. Yeah, because you won't need to prioritize crit rate or crit damage. They'd still be nice, but you don't need to prioritize them. Yeah, and that's basically it for the character's kit, guys. So if you didn't understand that, you can watch some bits of it again. But we're gonna go over some of the weapons that Nilou could probably use, right? We're going to go over some of the things that weapons that Nilou could probably use and see what would be good for her. So, yeah. Anyway, these are the items per page. I want all of them. I don't know why the update is like this. It's genuinely a little bit annoying. But, yeah. So, what would you want? It seems as though you definitely want to stack HP on her. In fact, there is a new 5-star weapon that's coming out that does actually boost Nilou's HP. Which is this one. Yeah, so this is going to be her signature weapon, guys. It's called the Key of Hierophany, I believe it's called. Yeah, and it gives you health as its substat, 44 base attack, so it is the lowest out of all the 5-star weapons, but it comes with a massive, fat HP substat, which is what Nilou wants. So yeah, anyway, the passive is basically HP is increased by 20%. And when an elemental skill hits an opponent, you gain the Grand Hymn effect for 20 seconds. So basically, your HP is straight up increased like by 20%. And then when your elemental skill hits an opponent, you gain the Grand Hymn effect for 20 seconds. This effect increases the equipping character's elemental mastery by 0.12% of their max HP. This effect can trigger once every 0.3 seconds, and it can stack up to 3 times. So Basically, in Nilou's full hit combo, you should be able to get all 3 stacks. And when the effect gains 3 stacks, or when the third hit stack duration is refreshed, the elemental mastery of all nearby party members will be increased by 0.2% of the equipping character's max HP for 20 seconds. So, yeah, because the way the bloom reaction works, it does scale with elemental mastery, the actual damage bit of it. So, yeah, this definitely would be really, really strong for Nilou. And also, Kuki Shinobu could utilize this as well, because if you guys didn't know, Kuki Shinobu's kit also scales with HP. Yeah, so this could also be a really good weapon for Kuki Shinobu, if anyone's a Kuki Shinobu main out there. Yeah, and look at that. The bonus attack goes up to 541, but the HP will go all the way to 66.15%. My god, that is ridiculous. Yeah, you're going to need the new artifact domain, the weapon domain, in order to actually get the what's it called, the things for it, the material. Radium Prism is dropped by Primal Constructs. Okay, so I'm presuming they're the ruin monsters, and then these things are dropped from the Ermites, basically the Sumerian treasure hoarders. At least that's how some people like to see it. They're just mercenaries, basically. So yeah, they're basically just human enemies, effectively. Yeah. And as for the passive effect, so the initial HP will be increased all the way, is something amiss here? What's going on? Is there a typo? Why does it go from 20 to 25 to 20 to 25 to 20? Again, I don't understand that. I'm presuming it's a typo, but I'm presuming it goes up 20, 25, 30, 35, and 40%, just like with the Staff of Homer, because that's how it is for the Staff of Homer. The Staff of Homer has this exact same passive, this bit initially anyway, as well as the Primordial Jade Cutter as well. So, yeah, I'm presuming this goes up to 40% here. Then the element, what is it, the stacks duration stay the same. Then the Elemental Mastery, it seems, got from 0.12% all the way to 0.24% of max HP, and it can trigger, the trigger effect stays the same, the maximum stack stays the same, 3 stacks again, and then this number, when the nearby party member Elemental Mastery is increased by 0.2, all the way up to 0.4%, yeah. So basically just the actual numbers are changing, basically. So, honestly, this could be a ridiculously strong weapon. I think it would be a ridiculously strong weapon for Nilou. Now, what other swords can Nilou use? What other ones can she use? Well, there's obviously her 5-star version. Then I'm presuming, I would think that the Primordial Jadewing Cutter as well as the Mistsplitter Reforged would also work on her as well. So, yeah. Because obviously they just have the regular crit rate and crit damage that Nilou would want. Summit Shaper, I'm not so sure. Especially if you're running a shield unit with Nilou, I don't think that's going to be the best. Because in order for the first passive to really take full effect, you kind of want to take damage a little bit. So, yeah, it doesn't really make sense to run this weapon on Nilou. Freedom Sworn could be good with her, especially the amount of focus that Elemental Mastery brings. But I don't think it would be a best in slot because HP is what she wants. And she also gets bonus Elemental Mastery from her kit through HP as well. So it might not be the best, but it's definitely an option. Aquila Favonia just will not make sense on her at all because all her damage all the time will most likely be Hydro. So yeah. As for any of the other options, the prized Ishin Blade, I would think that makes sense, but again, it has a massive focus on attack, and Nilou doesn't have very high base attack. She has 229, which isn't really that high for a 5-star unit. So, yeah, I don't think it would really make sense on her, any attack-related weapons. You could definitely run it as a substitute, or, you know, as your main weapon. You definitely can, but I just don't think it would really be brilliant. The Xiphos Moonlight Blade. This one comes with Elemental Mastery. I think this is a new weapon. We can take a look at it, actually. So, it gives you Elemental Mastery, and the following effect will trigger. The equipping character will gain 0.052% energy recharge for each point of Elemental Mastery they possess with 12 seconds, with nearby party members gaining 30% of this buff. Multiple instances of this weapon can... Okay. So basically, it's just an energy recharge scaled off of Elemental Mastery kind of weapon, which isn't really what Nilou wants, again. So yeah. As for any of, hopefully there are some free-to-play options that we can use. Like most flute, you could probably use. Honestly, to be fair, the attack percent weapons you could definitely use. Like Royal Longsword would actually be a good one because it increases the crit rate, so her DPS would actually increase. Yeah. Lion's Roar, I don't really think Lion's Roar would make sense, especially if you want to be building Nilou's team around Hydro and Dendro, so I wouldn't really recommend building the Lion's Roar with her. Yeah. The Blackcliff Longsword is definitely a good option, as well as the Black Sword as well, if you guys have the funds for it. So, yeah. That's also not a bad option. Amenoma Kageyuchi, after casting an elemental skill. Ooh. Because Nilou's elemental skill is on a very long cooldown, I don't think that Amenoma Kageyuchi would be the best for her. So, yeah. Yeah, but this is the weapon that we talked about earlier, the Kagotsurube Ishin. Yeah, so basically, guys, I think all the 5-star weapons are pretty decent on her. This is obviously going to be her best in slot. The crit damage and crit rate weapons would be really good. The Primordial Jade Cutter would actually be a really good second option best in slot because of the fact that it increases her HP, which is what Nilou wants, and because it also scales with HP, the attack bonus that it grants. It's also going to be really strong if you think about it. So the Primordial Jade Cutter is also a really good option if you don't have the Primo Gems or the money to go for her best in slot. So yeah, but the other options as well, they also are really, really good with Nilou, the crit damage. Freedom Sworn's also not a bad option. You definitely don't want to be running this the Aquila Favonius though. The Skyward Blade, energy recharge I don't really think would be a problem for her if you're running another Hydro unit, which you most likely want to be. Yeah. But that's basically it for the actual, you know, weapons side, guys. Most likely, Harbinger of Dawn is also really good, but you do want to be taking damage on Nilou. Well, not on, yeah, specifically on Nilou, I think. You know, because of that, maybe Harbinger of Dawn won't be the best option, but it is still there. Yeah. Anyway, let's head over to the artifact set. This video's probably already taken about 30 minutes of your lives, but, you know, we do what we must in order to get this video out. So, yeah, we'll head down to this section here. Now, obviously, the best in-slot weapon choice, or not weapon choice, artifact choice for her is definitely going to be... Where on earth is it? There it is. Tenacity of the Millelith. I mean, it only makes sense, right? Tenacity of the Millelith, it only makes sense. Now, the 4-piece you can actually also use as well, because let's not forget, Nilou's elemental skill actually counts as elemental skill actually counts as elemental skill damage. So because of that, you can actually keep reapplying the 4-piece. Now, the attack percent increase is actually quite nice, but the shield strength isn't needed. But if you do choose to run Nilou with a shield, then it could also be really good there. The Tenacity of the Millelith. But I was thinking her best in slot would probably be something like Tenacity of the Millelith 2-piece and then Heart of Depth 2-piece, because that would increase the Hydro damage bonus that she deals. So, yeah. As for anything else, Shimenao's Reminiscence also doesn't seem like a bad shout on her, because, you know, when you cast your elemental skill... but then again, to be honest, her elemental skill, because because her elemental skill counts as elemental skill damage, I don't think Shimenao's Reminiscence would actually work, the 4-piece I mean anyway, because her elemental skill counts as elemental skill damage, not normal charge or plunging attack damage. So because of that, I think the 4-piece is kind of useless on her, yeah, which is a shame, but it is what it is. You could probably still use the 2-piece though. Then there's Vermilion Hereafter, which wouldn't make sense on Nilou either, because even though you do want to be taking damage, you don't actively want to take damage, if that makes sense. So you want to, so you can get hit because it will reward you, but you don't want to actively seek getting hurt. So, yeah. Echoes of an Offering is an artifact set that is very controversial because not a lot of people like it because of the whole weird aspect where the 4 set where the artifact set needs to crit in order to get the extra damage bonus, if that makes any sense. Yeah. But it's not a bad set, but once again, this is for normal attack damage users, and obviously Nilou is not a normal attack damage character. She's an elemental skill damage character. So honestly, really, the only actual sets that I can really say are actually quite decent is 4-piece Tenacity of the Millelith, as well as 2-piece Tenacity of the Millelith and 2-piece Heart of Depth. you can't. I was gonna say you could build Heart of Depth, but I just realized you can't because elemental skill damage moment. So yeah, there's that. Bloodstained Chivalry and Pale Flame make 0 sense, so I would not do that at all. Anything else? I don't really see any other set really being that brilliant on her. Gladiator's Finale, I would say makes sense, but it doesn't because it's only normal attack damage that increases, not elemental skill damage. So, really, your choices are actually quite limited for Nilou's artifact sets. You can either go 4-piece Tenacity of the Millelith, or 2-piece Heart of Depth and 2-piece Tenacity of the Millelith. As for the new sets, well, obviously she doesn't deal Dendro damage bonus, so I don't think the Dendro... I don't think Deepwood Memories really makes sense with her. And then Gilded Dreams. Now, Gilded Dreams... Oh, excuse me, please. No, don't do that. No, please. Why are you... Okay, there we go. Gilded Dreams. So, Gilded Dreams increases Elemental Mastery by 80, and the 4 set is within 8 seconds of triggering an elemental reaction. The character equipping this will obtain buffs based on the elemental type of the other party members. Attack is increased by 14% for each character whose elemental type is the same as the equipping character, and the elemental mastery is increased by 50 for every... Okay. So basically, if you're running like 2 Hydro characters and 1 Dendro character, you'll receive 14% increased attack and 50 extra elemental mastery. Huh. That's not a bad set, to be fair. Gilded Dreams could make sense on Nilou. Yeah. It does make sense, but I still wouldn't really recommend it. I think her best in slot is probably going to be 2-piece Tenacity and 2-piece Heart of Depth. Then Tenacity of the Millelith, and then probably Gilded Dreams if you were to if you really wanted to go for it. Now that that's out of the way, let's look at a bit of team building. So, as you guys know, Nilou, from the way that her kit works, she definitely wants a character that can give her more HP. So, someone like another Hydro character, because I don't actually think there's a character in the game that can actually donate HP to other characters. So the only real way of gaining more HP is obviously through the Dendro Resonance. So yeah, through the Dendro Resonance, most likely. So any one of the other Hydro characters, so Jingqi, Barbara, Candice, who's going to be the next 4-star Hydro character that comes out, probably Tartaglia, Yelan, Ayato, characters like that basically, Mona even. Yeah, so another Hydro character would be really useful in Nilou's team. And then it also sounds as though you want to build like a Bloom reaction team with her. So you could go double Dendro and double Hydro. I actually don't know what the Dendro Resonance does, annoyingly. Slightly annoying, but yeah, you could probably go double Dendro, double Hydro, or you could go double Hydro, Dendro, and then a Pyro character for the Vaporize as well as the Hyper Bloom, and then you could also use the Hyper Bloom to trigger Burn. No, it doesn't work like that, does it? Yeah. Bountiful Cause cannot trigger Hyper Bloom or Burgeon, yeah, so that won't work. But if you Vaporize and then maybe do a burning reaction, and then apply the Hyper Bloom, then, not Hyper Bloom, but like the regular Bloom, then I guess that could work. Yeah, but basically, you want to have at least 2, you want to have Nilou included, another Hydro character. So Nilou, another Hydro character, a Dendro character, and then your last slot is basically a flex slot. So you could basically have another Dendro character, another Cryo character for a Frozen comp. You could have another Hydro character if you really wanted to, or a Pyro character, or someone like that, basically. But I think that's how you would actually want to build her, basically. Yeah, I don't want to go into specific characters because I don't want to make you guys restricted on what characters to use. Like, oh yeah, use this character or use this character because it's going to be best. I'm just giving you guys ideas so that you could probably implement those ideas into your party for Nilou, possibly. But yeah, anyway guys, that has been the entire video. I think it's been a 40-minute video or something. It's been ridiculously long. I do apologize for taking so long, but these characters are coming out with new kits and new weapons, and they're becoming more and more detailed over time and the further things go. So, yeah, I really do hope that this kind of fixed any confusion that you guys had about Nilou, and hopefully it gave you a little bit of insight as to what you can really build on Nilou. So, yeah, anyway, guys, I have been Carvenus14, and still am, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you all very, very soon. Goodbye.